as always. We'll just give it a minute or two as people start to join. It's always good to know where you're dialing in from. So if you want to pop your location in the chat, it was always quite nice to hear about the different locations we've got people dialing in from. Going to be very stereotypical Brit today to talk about how cold it's gone, obviously.
Cold and dark. That's the other thing. I've had to put my light on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. Bradford. I can imagine it's pretty chilly up in Bradford. Freezing, yeah. Yeah, it's when you get the little weather app that says what the temperature is, what it feels like, and you're like, well, how could it be like 10 degrees or 8 degrees, but it feels like 1 or 2? Like, how does that work? Surely it must be 1 or 2 degrees. I just don't understand that. Surely if it feels like it must be. Sure someone will answer that for me later on. I know we had a number of people signed up for this, but often people watch it on catch up. So what do you reckon, Lee? Should we get the ball rolling?
I think so. Let's crack on.
Cool. So welcome to today's EX Space webinar. My name is Emma Bridger, and I'm joined by my colleagues Lee Smith and Katie from the EX Space. Like that. That's kind of coordinated hand wave there. And I'll introduce our very special guest in just a second. But before I do, a couple of plugs from our point of view. EX Space, for those of you who don't know, it's a membership-based learning community. We've got like about 700 members now, Katie, right? Is that right? Nodding.
Yeah, there or thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah. So a growing community of people who are passionate about the experience we intentionally design for colleagues at work. You can join for free. EX Essentials is completely free. There is no catch. So you're not already a member, join for free. There's lots of really cool resources on there. And there's also a paid for membership where you get lots of brilliant accredited training that you won't find anywhere else in the world. It's based on books that I've written, stuff that Lee's done, and we're just about to launch, or we have launched actually some brand new training as well, courses specifically for the internal communication audience, based around that upcoming book, which I need to plug, which is out 3rd of December, which is called People First Internal Communication. So if you're interested in that, let us know, because we've got a really nice juicy 30% off code. So Kate could probably see that in the chat. Lee, what have I forgotten to say? I always forget to say loads of stuff I'm supposed to say at the beginning of these webinars. My mind goes blank. What else are we supposed to talk about here? What have I forgotten?
Well, my Wi-Fi is all over the place, so I may not have clocked it all, but obviously we've got the chat functionality. Please dive into that as we're going. Any questions, observations for Alex? I think that's probably it, Emma. Let's crack on.
Alrighty. So big thank you to Alex today for joining us from Silicon Reef. So I love Alex's job title. He's the Chief Visionary Officer, right, Alex?
That's right. Yeah.
I love that. It's just, you can explain what that means in a minute. And Alex is Chief Visionary Officer for a brilliant company called Silicon Reef, who I've had the joy of working with a couple of times over the years, and huge fans of Silicon Reef. And I'll let Alex tell you about Silicon Reef because clearly it's his organisation. He'll do a much better job than I could. But part of the reason we've got Alex on today is because Silicon Reef do amazing work, and they are, I guess, one of the few companies that we've worked with and partnered with that have very much a people first approach, as we do at EX Space, at People Lab, which is my consultancy as well. And Alex did a brilliant, or wrote for us a brilliant case study, which features in the book, involving some work that was done with the University of Leeds, which she's going to talk about today. So it just seemed really fitting in the run up to the book coming out on the 3rd of December. We invite Alex along to talk about Silicon Reef, the work that you do there in terms of the people first approach, and share a case study. It's always good to sort of see behind the curtain, isn't it? And actually hear about what other companies are doing, right? So so that's my kind of intro. So really chuff you're here, Alex. And yeah, over to you. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, guys. And yeah, thanks Emma and Lee and Katie for the intro, and great to be here to share this experience. And also, I feel honored to be invited to be part of the book, to be honest. It's a privilege. So yeah, get your copy today and you can see more about the case study in there. There you go. There's building on your plug, Emma. Right, so I am going to just share my screen and focus in on this case study today. So hopefully that's all coming up now. So before I kick into this, I guess I'll just set the scene as to who we are and what we do. As Emma said, we're a Microsoft 365 consultancy practice. So everything to do with Microsoft 365, from SharePoint to Teams to your intranet to Power Platform to Copilot, of course. I think that's the thing that Microsoft are talking about more than ever. We're a consultancy that do take a very much a people-led approach, and it's part of our ethos called Work Happy. And everything we do around Work Happy is all about employee engagement, productivity, collaboration, and well-being. And we think the Microsoft ecosystem is the place where all those things can come together to drive employee experience. So what we're going to take you through today is a case study. Actually, we started this piece of work a couple of years ago now, and it's the one that you can read about in the book. And it's talking about how we took our approach, our people-led approach, to understanding and listening to build a solution for University of Leeds as part of their digital transformation program. So I'm going to take you through a set of slides just to show you the experience and the steps that we went through. And then I'll actually flip out of the slides and go into Mural. And Mural, if you don't know, is a fantastic tool for building out virtual walls of post-it notes and things like that. So I'll show you some of the work we did where we actually engage people. That's really the empathy part that we were here to talk to about today, of getting people's buy-in, understanding and listening to what it is that they're trying to achieve here. So I'll go through that. But before I do, I will set the scene about what it was like when we started to speak to the University of Leeds. And the challenge that they had was predominantly around fragmentation of their employee experience. And this slide is supposed to represent the right-hand side. Was there are 9,000 employee organization. That's across academic and administrative roles. And their internal digital landscape, much like most organizations that are growing or have grown to that size, it was really fragmented and difficult to navigate. So this is representing the different types of audiences that they had, from external staff and students, and that they were using WordPress, like WordPress that you build websites on, and they were using that to display their internal content that was meant for staff. And for me, that was a bit of an eye-opening moment. I was like, wow, really? Is that something that's happening? And since that moment, 2.5 years ago, I've heard this again and again over the last couple of years in education institutions. And they had 650 sites there, and a platform on something called Jadu, which was their existing intranet, their existing for-staff intranet. And they had 22 sites there. That was really the place where those internal documents and those internal policies, but also storytelling, it was happening in patches there. The left-hand side, the staff and students part, and the little icons I've put there to represent the SharePoint sites and the team and SharePoint sites. That was just showing you that actually what had happened since staff were experiencing this fragmented approach, they started to take things into their own hands. So they were given a Microsoft license and they were said, here you go, here's SharePoint, here's Teams, off you go. No governance, no control, and they were allowed to just spin up sites whenever they needed it. So they created 91 of these communication sites and 553 Teams sites. So these are the sites that get created when you create a team. So it was building upon that fragmented and really difficult to navigate experience for the staff, and they didn't know where to go. For any kind of finding information, looking up what's going on across the university. They didn't know whether to go to external, internal, whether it was Jadu, whether it was Teams, or whether it was SharePoint. They just didn't know where to go. So as part of this, one of the biggest things that happened in the university a couple of years ago is they had a strategic decision to consolidate into Microsoft 365, and that's where Silicon Reef got involved. So what I'm going to take you through today is not necessarily the output, which was a new intranet, but how we got there with our people-led approach and the sorts of activities that we did to be able to build towards listening and understanding what it is that people need, as well as their pain points with their current experience across that fragmented experience of all the different applications that they needed. So we conducted a set of research activities, and I'm not going to go through all of these today, but the bit that I am going to dive into a bit more is the envision session, because in my experience, it's very easy to send out lots of surveys and do lots of listening. It's, you get a bit of a staff feedback, but actually getting people in a room, listening to them and hearing them talk about their experiences and capturing those moments where you're thinking, wow, that's a really important part, and I'm listening and I'm understanding that person's role and how it might affect other people they work with. The Envision session was a stakeholder workshop where we listened to lots of different people, and then we were able to capture and create a vision statement that represented the direction of the project. So this was going to become our North Star, and I'll cover that shortly. So the research activities as part of Silicon Reef's methodology, whenever we're talking to anybody about an intranet or a development project, we always start with the people first listening as part of our define and design phase of our projects. So for the University of Leeds, one of the things that we did is we embarked on this 3-month period where we listened, we understood, we ran surveys, and you can see here that we ran the surveys, we ran the focus groups, and we wanted to get a good cross-section of audience. So across the different departments and directorates, from representing different parts of the university to really make sure that we were fully listening and understanding what it is that they needed and what the problem was today with how they're working. Because the University of Leeds are actually embarking on a multi-million-pound transformation, and this was just one program as part of that. So this data was actually used as part of the bigger transformation project to feed into that as well. So what we did by taking all of these different approaches and doing all of our listening, we identified 6 key areas that we were going to focus on as part of this project. So these areas, again, they came from the conversations that we had, the surveys that we gathered, and it really gave us and our client, the University of Leeds, an indication of what we needed to focus on. And we did a recommendation document as part of this. And again, I'm not going to go through all of that document today, but what we produced as part of that discovery was, I believe it was around a 45 or 50-page document that really captures all of the listening that we did, as well as a set of recommendations mapped to each one of these 6 areas with Microsoft 365 technology saying, with your purpose, we heard. What we believe you can do is, and we mapped all of these different elements to play it back to the audience and to really listen and to say, we've heard, we understand, and we will. And so these 6 areas are covered as part of our project. And again, you'll see them as part of the roadmap later on. But as I said, I don't plan today on going into lots of different things about the survey or the other workshops that we ran. This is the one I want to focus on, because I often think it's one of the things that, like I said, it's overlooked when it comes to getting people together in the room and really hearing and listening and thinking, what are we trying to do here together? And what does success look like? And at Silicon Reef, we call that an Envision session. And the Envision session we ran with the University of Leeds was getting people into smaller groups and to understand the Simon Sinek approach of why are we here? What is it we're trying to achieve? What does success look like? And getting everybody to align to that North Star moment where we say, what is it we're trying to achieve? How does it align to our digital strategy that, again, was being part of that wider plan for the university? And also listening to their feedback about specific pain points. So when we come to thinking about solutions and also identifying, the actual outcomes at the end, we can say, we heard this department, this faculty struggled to find documents, find people, listen, connect with each other in a social way. What are the outcomes and how can we map those back to success? And of course, as everything that we do, we try and make sure that we are understanding and listening to what does success look like from a set of outcomes that are measurable as well, so that they can continue to listen and evolve and progress that intranet. After we perhaps disengage and we hand it back, they know what a roadmap looks like for success. So achieving these goals, this is what we heard. These are the key pain points that we heard from people. They wanted an engaging user experience. They wanted to improve the search facilities. Now, that is the one theme that comes up for me in intranet projects again and again and again. Why is SharePoint search not finding the things I'm looking for? Well, that's where we really kind of come in and help to understand an architecture of how the content is laid out, how it needs to be permissioned and managed and maintained. And the other thing that we often hear from organizations, whether it's a university or a public sector organization, they always say, we want to make sure that this is future proof. How can we maintain this once that you've handed the keys over to us? We don't want to just get back to that messy point again. So what we did is we actually set up a framework that they could use to progress and map out their sitemap going forward with ownership amongst the different peoples, and gave them the skill sets to be able to self-support and self-maintain these going forward as well. So the why, what did we actually say in the end of it? I've actually got one more slide about the vision statement. But this was really when we ran that workshop between the key stakeholders in the university, and I think it was around 25 to 30 people helped shape this to make sure that we were doing a lot of listening. The key things that they came out with were they wanted to make sure that staff engagement was increasing. The student experience would improve because of it. And they wanted to make sure that they could have ambassadors within the university as part of that self-supporting mechanism. And actually, I'll show you the roadmap later on, but that ambassadorship piece really became reality. And 12 months after we actually launched the intranet, we went back for the first birthday, or the anniversary, not birthday. But we actually went back and we sat in a room with these people, and they said, this is great, look at these stories. And they told stories about their department, and they started to be their own advocates amongst their peers, saying, look how well we've done, look what we're doing over here. And they used Viva Engage to share those stories amongst each other. And if they needed help, they would use their ambassador network to really help and sustain that going forward as well. So performance, obviously, individual performance and giving them access to key information. These were some of the things that were brought out through that envisioning session. But ultimately, it culminated in this being the North Star. Everything that we did with the University of Leeds became, how can we make sure that we're putting everything into a place that, around the employees, whether it's tools like many organizations, they have 20 to 30 external third-party apps that they have to integrate with, from timesheets to expenses systems, HR applications. How can we make sure that everybody's got all they need as an individual, personalized to them, resources from policies or procedure documents or access to expertise within their organization, and really giving people everything they need to do their job. Now, the important bit that I like about this bit is it fosters connection across the university. That's often something that when we're speaking to people, they don't really think about the cultural element of an intranet and how it can be the epicenter where people come to, and it becomes that hub in the middle of everything. Every time I have a conversation with somebody about an intranet, the term one-stop shop inevitably comes up. But I think it really is that focal point that provides clarity. And if I'm looking for something or looking to try and find a person or expertise, I should be able to go to that one single place and find it. So the analogy is correct, but the connection that it provides with telling stories through your news articles, or being able to access information through Viva Engage and asking somebody a question out loud in a community. You can do all of those things through your intranet homepage. And ultimately, people wanted to feel that they were part of contributing towards that university's objectives. So if we could achieve all of these different elements, we would know we've been successful. So this was the statement that, as a project team on our side and on the University of Leeds side, we always came back to this. And this was the thing that, have we achieved it? Are we working towards this shared ambition of giving people everything they need in one single location? Right, I'm actually going to flip over a second because I want to now demo some of the work that we did with using Mural. So let me just stop sharing that slideshow and flip into this. So I'll zoom out of this, just a helicopter view to start off with, and then I'll zoom down and into it for a second. Lee, could you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that screen still? Yeah. Yeah, Emma, cool. Thank you. I see you there. Cool. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. Lee's giving me 100 thumbs up on there. Wow, that's amazing. Right. So this mural activity. Now, I said that we did lots of surveys. One of the things that when we did this survey, this was about 3 years ago. So in the era pre-AI. Wow, is that even a thing? Am I just making that up? Is pre-AI a thing now? But yeah, it's going to be a new term that's coined. Pre-AI, we used to get that survey data, put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then categorize and analyze the data. So what we did here is we wanted to do our listening. So one of our questions in the survey is, what do you like most about the staff intranet? And we broke it down into these categories, from look and feel, accessibility. There you go. There's the one-stop shop one. I'm sure somebody probably uses the term within there. Oh, look, there it goes, one stop. They missed the shop. Oh no, that's the brand of a shop. And then they actually put everything into categories here, so we could really understand what it is that people are saying. And this is their words. We're playing back to the University of Leeds. This is what people think and feel. And this is what they like about it today. So obviously we're pulling things out of, they like some of the ease of use of it, and they like the findability. And then if I look over on the right-hand side, these are all the things that they disliked about their staff intranet. So everything's changing, the fonts are different. So this was leading us towards that moment where we said, actually, how can we address some of these things? What are some of the key points here that we need to address? Not user-friendly, not intuitive, or having to scroll down to find things. So when we did our listening and all of our analysis, it was quite a manual way of doing it. And if we were to do this again, and I talked to Emma about this quite a bit, if we were to do this again, Copilot has a connector to Mural, so we could actually put all of this data into here and get it to do the analysis for us. So it would categorize and segment and all of these elements for us as well. So this is something, a very manual way that we used to do this, from putting things into these buckets. If I was to do this again, we would use a Copilot connector to Mural to help us to do the analysis. The other thing I wanted to show you was about when we come to thinking about designs. So this is the helicopter view. I'll zoom down and into it. But often when we do an intranet project, we do them really collaboratively, and we're making sure that representatives from each department are going to help us with defining a template. But one of the things that we do as part of our approach, and again, it's the same activity that you may do if you were building a consumer website or a consumer application, is you start to do the activity. And again, if you're in a room where you've done the sticky dots activity, where you put things with sticky dots and are prioritizing these things, we're starting to build upon the template. Well, what's important for you to have in a department template? What are the key things that you would like to have on there? So we went through this activity, and again, all these initials here represent the people that were involved in doing it, and they became really part of the framework for what the solution was going to look like. This is them getting their buy-in, so that I feel like I'm making sure that this is going to be a success for me, my department. I feel like I'm listened to and I'm contributing. Anything missing, we had the newsletter signups and things like that, for example. All of these things contributed towards making the department templates. And then this one doesn't have many sticky dots on it, but again, when you're thinking about a page hierarchy, this is the kind of activity that we would tend to go through for building out what should live at the top of a page, middle, and the bottom of a page. And we go through the sticky dots activity and make sure that people can align into putting things into the right structure. And what we did with the University of Leeds is we actually went through these different departments. So here's the example of, building out the department page based upon everything that we've heard. They wanted a landing page title so everybody knew it was their page, what it was about, access to key information. Again, the priority session would have been done, making sure we're putting the resources at the top. And these would have gone through some multiple iterations as well. So you can see different templates and different examples and different options there that we present to people. And this is all based upon the data that we've received, their feedback, their contribution towards building out these templates. And the reason why, again, we use these tools like Mural is because they can just sticky note it and say, yeah, I love that bit. What's this bit here going to do? Because ultimately, I've just flipped over to another example. When we start to do this across all of the different pages of an intranet, here's where you start to get your stakeholders coming in as well. So some stakeholders saying, oh, can we remove this section here, and can we change this, or can we make a change to the product so it does something slightly different, make this header slightly bigger. And this is exactly what you would do if you're building a new website. And if you're working in building a web page, these are the sorts of processes that you would go through. Why should the employee experience be any different when you're thinking about your staff across your organization? So we're building out these different areas, building out different pages, and listening and evolving the experience of all these different templates to achieve the success that they can actually take all of these templates and run with them. We build them, a couple of templates, and then they own it. They can evolve it and they can own it themselves to make sure that the longer term success of the intranet continues to thrive once we've moved on from delivering the project. So there were just again another helicopter view. These are all the different activities that we did. Again, I'm not going to go into all of them, but this is a fantastic tool for how we work collaboratively with people to make sure that we're understanding and listening. And the bit like being in a room where you really feel part of, you're contributing to something, it feels like it's very people focused to say, oh, wow, I helped shape that. I remember doing that thing with Mural with the diagrams and the sticky notes and putting it on the wall. And if you wanted to know more, there's this link here. I think I'll share it with Katie to put it on the sharing it afterwards. But here's all the criteria, all the case study, and all the information is available here, and you can kind of download it as a file. So I'll make sure that link is shared afterwards as well. Right, let me just jump back into the presentation. So how did we get there? It took some time, and it was, in the cliche term, a journey to make it happen. This is not anything more than my thoughts about the intranet to employee experience platform to digital workplace solutions. So this is not an official table or anything like that. This is something if I'm thinking about what I typically see on an intranet and what I think about of a digital workplace. But what it does is it helps frame how you go about starting your journey of developing an intranet, exactly the same way as we did with the University of Leeds. We replaced the old one with a new one, but they also understood that it was a minimum viable product approach. Let's get something together. Let's do that piece where we're consolidating and removing the fragmentation, which was the biggest pain point that we heard right at the beginning. And then you can iterate it. So the bit I really like to focus on here is the strategic role of each of these platforms. Can we make sure that the intranet is a place that would allow people to be informed and aligned? Now, lots of internal communications people on this call today will appreciate the role that news articles and comms play in informing and align about transformation programs, change programs, employee updates, campaigns. The intranet is a central place where that happens. Then you think about iterating and evolving that. So in the case study for the University of Leeds, their evolution was actually, once all the department sites had been built, we started to connect them all together to really bring back elevate that search experience. But then they started to layer in Viva Engage, where people could have conversations. And it really helped them build a sense of attachment, association to the organization and their wider community amongst the 9,000 staff. On the right-hand side, that's actually where we are working towards today with the University of Leeds as a customer. And we're now starting to bring in some of their line of business applications, whether that's SAP or other HR or IT systems, so that actually it feels even less fragmented and a more simple to navigate experience. And this slide, as basic as it is from a smart art perspective, but it just takes you through the key steps about how do I go across that intranet to employee experience to digital workplace? What does the journey look like? And we just use the simple analogy of crawl, walk, run, and fly. And it's all about how do I just make it a better employee experience for people? How do I put things in a single place, that one-stop shop? And I've just made some of these bold, which might not be that easy to see on here, but the intranet piece is all about just that centralization. And then the 3-year roadmap helps to shape which of these elements we want to focus on next. So for the University of Leeds, it was actually then how can we bring in our data from our other ERP systems, and how can we make sure that we're getting AI ready by organizing our documentation into a structured way and making sure that people can find things. How do we make sure that people don't find things they shouldn't is equally as important in the world of AI as well. And then how can we make sure that we're using that generative AI to help me with my productivity and my role? And then you start to think about, actually, now we've consolidated into that Microsoft ecosystem, have we got things we don't need anymore that we can just replace it? And we can actually start to cost save by internalizing those systems. And again, the conversations that we have as we build out these roadmaps, that's very much a conversation that happens within 12 to 18 months. We start to identify further opportunities. And then how do we make sure that everything's connected in that flying world where we're using agents to have conversations, and we haven't got to go and click through and search everything. The information comes back to me with an agent presenting me with that data. But that can only really be successful if you've gone from the crawl to the walk to the run. Because if you're looking for using agents to connect all your systems and find information, and you haven't consolidated your data, got everything in an order, and also got people experience with using generative AI, there's no chance you can get to fly, because the people are going to start getting a backwards journey back to walking again because they're just giving up on it. So in my experience, I really want to make sure that we do it in this sequential order, because working towards a digital workplace where everything's connected, it can be done, but you have to lay those solid foundations. My penultimate slide, Emma and Lee, just teeing you up on this one now, my penultimate one. This is what we did for the University of Leeds. So this is what the roadmap looked like. And again, this is the helicopter view. I will zoom in with the magic of PowerPoint. Here we go. So zooming into this section here. So we set out a 90-day plan with them. And these are a set of activities. And you can just see the breakdown, what was owned by the University of Leeds, what did we own as an external entity, and what were other things that we said we were going to do or might not be included as part of a project plan. But this very much quickly became the roadmap view across that 2-year journey with them, whether they were rolling out enhanced analytics, Viva Engage, in reality, that actually spanned all the way back into here as part of their adoption and change program. They really expanded that. But in this initial view that we had with them, they thought, oh, we'll do that in the future. We'll do that in the future. But through a series of workshops and case studies that we shared with them, and demonstrations, they actually said, oh, actually, let's do that earlier on because that will help with this problem. And this is a tool that we use as again, it's much like the vision statement. You hold it here and you say, this is what the future could look like, and we iterated it through a project plan. But each of these benefits above, each of these gray boxes, these maps to some of the problem statements that we identified from our listening earlier on. So we used all that data that we gathered from listening to the staff, listening to the stakeholder feedback, and we helped to map out across the journey of 2 years how the benefits can be realized. Because, as I said, the crawl, walk, run, fly analogy, it's there to make sure that it's a continual improvement. And where we are now with the University of Leeds, we're actually heading towards that run and that fly. We're probably a little bit behind the time where we could be with it, but things like being able to integrate with SAP and reusing an agent to be able to query data from the intranet or from Teams, wherever they might be working, to go and pull out SAP data. That's exactly the conversation that we're having them now. And it all stems from laying these solid foundations. And so my last slide, this is the bit that I put in the book, Emma. This is actually some of the things that are in there. So the things that I want you to take away from today is that the empathy piece, don't just assume that you know what the answer is. You have to go and actually ask and listen. The co-creation piece, don't underestimate it, because if you truly are going to be taking a people-led approach, get them in the room. I mean, there was nothing better. I mean, Mural is fantastic at doing the job of replicating the sticky notes on the wall, but we really were able to pick up those key moments of listening and helping understand what people need, because the emotion part as well, when you think about what it means and people contribute towards building something, I personally feel that all the time when I'm doing things like with my kids. Or why should it be any different when you're at work? Like, if you're feeling like you're emotionally involved in it and you're contributing towards it, you have to remember how that makes you feel. And for me, that's a really important part about when you're taking a people-led approach. You've engaged with them, bring them along the journey with you, and continue that feedback loop as part of that as well. Thinking in systems, so Microsoft 365 is a system, it's an ecosystem, and everything is connected there. So whether you're a channel manager or an intranet manager, you've got to think about how all your systems work together. So make sure you're designing for how everything will piece together. Silicon Reef is called Silicon Reef because the reef is part of the ecosystem. And that's why we branded our company that way. The same as Microsoft 365. You can't think of channels in isolation anymore. And now when we start to think about agentic AI, it's another way of people being able to consume things across multiple channels. So those systems need to be well-defined, well-established to be able to leverage agentic AI as you go forward. And again, those foundations, I kind of just covered that a little bit, but AI and its place within your organization, it will only be as successful as the foundations that you've laid. If you're in your early phases with adopting it, thinking about how you can use it for your personal productivity before scaling it out across the organization as well. And the being brave, I always think that's a bit of a life motto, challenge yourself, challenge each other, be brave, encourage you to think about what I see could be if you are a little bit braver. Adopt things perhaps that you haven't already tried already, like Viva Engage, like Copilot agents, whatever it might be. And think about those things that you perhaps may be dependent on from third party today, and how can they be changed or consolidated as part of your roadmap for evolution of your projects as well. And that's it. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening today. And Emma and Lee, I'll open up the floor to questions. I'll probably end the slideshow and stop sharing.
Oh, thanks, Alex. That was brilliant, really interesting, and like I say, really good to see sort of behind the curtain as to what actually happens with a project like this. Lee, any questions from you before I get stuck in? I've got a few questions, but anything from you before I get stuck in?
Yeah, love it as well. Thank you, Alex. A great case study, real world case study, which I always love. I want to rewind back to the beginning, the kind of insight and discovery phase that you did. In particular, you did a mix of qual and quant there with the focus groups and the survey. My experience of focus groups is always some absolute gems that come out of them. Was there anything particularly unusual or surprising, or anything that took you in a very different direction that emerged from that insight gathering phase?
I can't. It was so long ago now that I actually can't remember like any insight. That was almost 2 years ago. But I think for me, the bit that I remember being in some of the conversations and some of our consultants and user experience designers, just hearing how passionate people were about the challenges that they had, and but they loved their job, they loved their role, and they just were so up for being involved. And I remember one of the things that I went back for the 1 year anniversary. I didn't say birthday this time, the 1 year anniversary. And they came back and was like, I remember when we were talking to you guys at the very beginning and we said, this is what we're going to try and achieve. And look what I've done now. And they were like so proud to show. And they stood up in front of the room of, I think it was something about 50 people of their peers, all of whom are other site owners. And they were giving demos of things that they've done because they were so proud of it. And I actually like to think that if we hadn't have had those early days conversations where we'd listened to them and really kind of taken on board their pain points, they might have disengaged. They might have just thought, "Do you know what, it's just another one of those projects, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a success, so I'll just listen in." But they transformed and they were really part of the outcome. Yeah, that's the one thing I really remember, just seeing them on that 1 year anniversary, and they did badges, and I think there was even actually a cake, so I could have said it was a birthday.
And it's theirs, isn't it? It's the ownership that's really key. It's not something that's invented over there by the IC experts. It's their intranet, their workplace.
Yeah.
Great stuff. The other one, just to zoom out briefly, Emma and I in the book talk a lot, obviously, about AI. AI is the big game changer here, and the thing that's kind of forcing us to reboot and reimagine internal comms. But within the context of AI, we talk about the changing expectations of employees and their desire now for a kind of consumer grade experience. You've been doing this a while. How are you seeing that change? Is that really coming through into the workplace now? This sort of Netflix, Amazon mentality. This is what we want from within work as much as we do outside of it.
So I actually think the technologists of Microsoft and those things, they're releasing so many new features so fast. I don't think the consumers are able to keep up with it. As in the consumers of the technology, like right now, like you and I, using some of these things, like there's so much more it can do today that I don't think we're actually ready in the workplace for it the same way as we would be if it was, Netflix on your TV and, you're speaking to your remote control to say, find me that. And it searches Netflix, it searches Disney, and it searches Sky and everything, and all the other iPlayers and things that we're kind of used to. Imagine that on your intranet. It's kind of there already, but we just don't know it. So you can actually ask Copilot to go and search with your voice. Do we know that? Do other people on this call know that? Maybe not. No, exactly. So I'm not hearing people saying, "Oh, I wish I could search my intranet with my voice," but it's there. That you could if you wanted to. Are the needs and wants and demands of employees and colleagues who are building these kind of solutions mapping to the evolution of technology? Probably not. I think the expectations in work are actually lower. We're not that yet expecting it in the workplace, but the technology companies are evolving so fast that there's a huge gap that needs filling, and a lot of that is adoption, change management, communications, effective awareness, and driving innovation through, did you know that you could do this, and raising awareness and helping people on that, closing that gap perhaps. So am I hearing it, the demand for it in patches? It's not as big as I think Microsoft would like it to be, but actually I think they'll get it to a tipping point where it will suddenly accelerate and it will become the norm. The same as with using your, like I just said, your remote control for finding something. We'll just get used to having conversations with our desktops and with Copilot, and it will become the norm. Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you.
I will come back to the kind of the future bit in a minute, because I think while we've got you on, let's get into that. But before I do, I just love that kind of last slide, the principles. I love that kind of contribution to the book. And I think for me, the emotion piece is absolutely critical, because how many people pull their hair out over their experience with their intranets at work, right? So I think that although I hear that we're not ready yet for the kinds of whizzy kind of tools that we have outside of work, I think just having a slick experience. So when you do, whenever you think about brands like Amazon and Spotify, etc., the experience you have with them is so slick and seamless and frustration free that when you get into work and you go, well, I can't even find a document. I think for me that's the big thing. So it's that kind of like, your kind of roadmap of crawl, walk, run, I think that was great, because I think, a lot of companies are still in the crawling phase, but
Yeah.
outside we're flying, and it's just that gap's just becoming so big, isn't it? So I'm not saying we necessarily need the wizzy tools, we just need it to bloody well work, right? Just work.
Yeah.
That would be a
Yeah.
starting point, which is what you've achieved with obviously, and loads more with the University of Leeds.
Yeah, and if I was to dive down into some of those research, the qual and quant survey results, and the focus groups, I can guarantee you I just need it to work. I just need it to do the basic thing of allowing me to find stuff. Like, that's all. It's not a big ask.
It's
Like,
not.
you can really, you could probably see that in lots of that data that we get. But so many organizations that I speak to that are at that crawl phase, there are some really simple fundamentals that can be done to make things like search work, just from hooking things up and connecting everything together. I used the analogy the other day of the plumbing. Like, if the plumbing in your house isn't right, you're going to get a mess everywhere, right? So just put the plumbing together, because the technology is there. Just put the pipes together, make sure that everything's going in the right place, and you'll find it. Like, it will work the way it should do. It's just that some organizations have not thought about that for a while, and the house is aging, things are rotting, but they're continuing to grow the family. I'm building on an analogy here, and I'm going to stop there before I go any further. But yeah, so there are some really simple fundamentals that can be done.
Cool. I can see we've got a question from Neil. Thanks, Neil. But before I ask my big future question, Neil has asked lots of different stakeholders, but who owned this initiative? Was it people, team, IC, etc.? And talking about the fact that internet's notoriously co-owned, so I was intrigued how they managed to get everyone on the same page to even take the first steps in a project of this size. So classic conundrum that we face in this world, right?
Yeah, and I think when we talk about intranets, traditionally it's the IC team that own these. Like, they own the content, they will own it longer term. But every single project like this, it will only work if you have the triangle working together: the IC team, the IT team, the HR team. If you have the three of them coming together, you can build a successful intranet. Hold on, my dog's just barking. Shush. And the only way that this one worked really well was because we had a set of stakeholders in the comms team at the University of Leeds who were totally bought in to making this a success. And the way that they made it a success initially was to capture those stories that we did from those research groups and then listening, and they started to play it back to stakeholders internally to say, oh, look what we're hearing. This is the problem that we're hearing. But they also made articles, and they published them. Back again. Yeah, there we go. And they made little articles about making sure that everybody was informed on the journey. And I think part of that ownership was them saying, don't worry, we've got control of this. This is ours. And they took on the mantle of playing that back to the stakeholders, which really made it theirs. They were kind of feeling, this is ours. Don't worry, we've got this as the comms team. So but yeah, so the comms team did own it for the University of Leeds, but they did have a great stakeholder buy-in, which is why that Envision session that we ran at the beginning, that wasn't just IC, that was IC, IT, up to like really senior people in the university as well. Everybody kind of bought into the vision statement.
Yeah, so just a kind of bit of a, I suppose, showing some tools here. And I know that we use a lot of similar tools, the work that we've done together in the past, but using tools from things like design thinking, service design, which are very much used in tech programs externally, but not often within internal comms. So even something as simple as like mapping the journey that people go through when they use your intranet, your SharePoint, what's that look like? Where are the friction points? Where are the pain points? Something as simple as that can really help. And as you said, you mapping that journey from different views of stakeholders will show you where where it's working well, where it's happening, and where the pain points and the friction is, and that negative emotion that you don't want really comes about. So just looking at time, I've got one more little question related to the project, then I'm going to go for my bigger question. So as you know, we're huge fans of everything you've talked about, and we use Miro boards, you use mural boards, they're the same sort of thing, but you're just brilliant for gathering that insight, and we're huge fans as well. I love it. What do you do though when you get all that great insight and you have to kind of take a call? So you don't dilute the vision to the extent at which you just keep everybody happy and then no one's happy, right? How do you manage that tension? Because that's a tension that we often have in kind of collaboration, co-creation projects. So how do you manage that?
It often comes down to our stakeholder group that we have involved at the very beginning. And for us, as I said, the IC team was absolutely on board, and we scaled it out to varying levels of the IC team internally. But that envision session that we ran at the beginning, it really kind of broke down that kind of ability to say, oh no, we're not going in that direction, we're going in this direction, because everybody aligned and agreed at the very beginning. And as you've probably experienced, Evan, what you said, like sometimes people deviate from that as we're going along. The goalposts start to shift, and we kind of feel as a vendor, like as a third party involved in these things, we'll support the conversation to say, actually, no, let's shift that goalpost back to where it was. But equally, things change. Like technology evolves. Even imagine doing this, and like I said earlier on, like we started some of these things, and AI wasn't even around as a Copilot wasn't a thing when we started. When we're starting some of these projects now, we're starting to think, well, how do you want to use this? Do you want to shift the goalpost? Because today we're only focusing on creating, static content. How can we do more automation? How can we bring AI into the conversation? And it's okay to shift those goalposts. We just all need to then re-baseline and re-agree those things as well. So there's no single answer to your question, but it kind of depends on the stakeholders you got involved a lot of the time. But I think it's okay to shift the goalposts so long as you're bringing people on the journey with you. And typically when we're involved in these intranet projects or employee engagement or employee experience projects, you've got great storytellers involved whose job it is to steer people and guide people along the journey, and they know how to spin something to. Like, I'm not saying it's spin doctoring, Emma, but I'm just saying it's like they can steer the narrative, and they can make it work. And that's why I love working with internal comms people, because they have that ability to shape the conversation and to help you steer it in the right direction to get to the destination that you wanted at the beginning. So yeah, I think just making sure that you're stakeholdering extremely well, but also be ready to shift those goalposts.
Yeah, and what I heard as well is like getting that kind of those key principles that you're all adhering to signed off and agreed at the beginning to sort of guide the conversation. I think that's something that kind of really resonated with me. So on the bigger question, because we've got you on, and obviously you come from a kind of a tech background, if you like, or that be it in internal comms. So we're seeing, and I know we've talked about this, we're seeing lots of conversation around the way that AI is impacting how we use tech outside of work, right? So, the days of doing Google searches are coming to an end, yeah? So internally, right, as people start to get more confident with Copilot, it's probably going to be the dominant AI. There might be others, right? But let's say Copilot for argument's sake, and using agents. And I've been experimenting with agents for a while now, and still getting my head around. I'm on a learning curve, but using agents. How's that going to shift the intranet as we know it?
Yeah. So I was speaking to somebody in our team last week about this concept of the AI-led intranet, or the AI intranet. I think agents are going to have a huge part to play in that. That frustration piece around, like, I'm searching for something and I just can't bloody find it, like that thing there. Like, an agent is smart, really smart. They can be grounded in data though. So whoever's designing agents, whether it's you or whether it's your IT team, grounding that data and pointing it to the sources of truth is absolutely vital. That's how agents are successful. So I think there's going to be a tipping point where, we're already seeing some of these demands coming through in our pre-sales conversations, is how can we integrate an agent that searches across all of our HR policies so that people don't have to? I just want to be able to ask, like, how much is our standard holiday allowance, or and those sorts of basics, the actual basics. The bit that I think is going to be really smart is when you can start to query things like your HR records, and it can manually, well, it can do this now. This isn't even a future thing. You can actually ask it to go and pull back your HR records from Workday and start to say, how many days leave have I got left? Oh, great. Can I take 3 days next week between this date and that date? And the agent's doing it for you. Like, and then it just comes back and says, "Yep, that's booked."
Yeah.
Those task-based actions are starting to happen
Yes.
already today.
Hygiene stuff. Yeah. I'm just wondering though, whether the kind of the front door will be through Copilot or whatever you're using, rather than going onto your intranet site. So that will be your starting point. You'll go from this. Obviously, the architecture behind it still needs to be right. And as you said, the plumbing needs to be correct, of course, so that it all works. So I wonder if that's going to be the kind of the way in that's going to completely change the way we use tech at work to get our jobs done and to connect with people and to innovate and, all that sort of stuff. So exciting
Yeah,
times.
it's really exciting. And I'm privy to some of the stuff that Microsoft are releasing. And actually, starting today is something called Microsoft Ignite, and it's a 3-day event in the US in Vegas. And they'll be releasing all the new stuff that's coming out, whether it's Copilot, well, it's always going to be Copilot now, but Copilot, Engage, SharePoint, all the latest updates are going to be coming out in the next 3 months. Sorry, in the next 3 days for the next 12 months ahead. And some of the things I know that are happening is take a SharePoint news article. Copilot is going to be able to create you an audio summary that you can listen to in your iOS CarPlay. It's a thing. It's going to tell you the story out loud. And some of you may have already experienced when you're doing something like a meeting recap in Teams now. You can do an audio recap, and it's a man and a lady having a conversation with each other about the. I'm like, what the? This is amazing.
We've done some of those. Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
It's really fun. It's really fun. But think about that concept and what that means to telling stories and pushing out news internally. The next thing I think that could happen, and if you think about consumer AI, what Google are doing with Sora, their video platform, I'm really intrigued to see whether there's going to be something that takes text-based stories and translates it into a video, like a Sora AI, kind of the Google version. What's Microsoft's version of that going to be? And how are they going to bring that into telling stories? And will the intranet shift to being like a Netflix? Will it be something that, you take that text-based SharePoint article and all of a sudden you're browsing Netflix trying to find an article that you're looking for, and you're watching a 30-second clip, and it may not be the actual people, but it could be their digital twin. Imagine a digital twin telling a story of you and Lee talking about your book, and you're not actually even there. It's an AI version, a digital twin of yourselves. It's very exciting.
It's exciting. I just
but
things
scary.
Setting up your agent, sort of say, right, this is me, this is my job, this is what I do. Here's what I need to know. Here's what I want to know. Also, you tell me some stuff. So suddenly I'm not having to go and find something. It's just going, hey, Emma, by the way, you might have missed this update because I see you haven't opened your email on it, but you need to know about this, or you've got something to sign over here, or just to let you know there's a new report coming. Just all of that kind of like that, the way agents, I think, will transform the kind of personalization is really exciting. Sorry, I'm waffling on now. Lee, any other questions for you before we finish up? Because I don't think we've got any more questions in the chat, have we? I did have a quick look.
I don't think so. I think just an observation, really. I thought your crawl, walk, run, fly metaphor analogy, absolutely love that. And in a way that sort of maps the journey that we talk about in the book for internal communicators more generally. Alex is sort of moving from information sharing, you had to inform and align, through to building experiences, enabling and empowering the workforce, the organization. And that's really what our book is all about. So yeah, love that. Fantastic.
Cool. Well, I think we're pretty much coming to time. So just want to say a massive thank you to you, Alex, for coming on. Really appreciate it. And for contributing to the book as well. It's a great edition. It's really
My
great.
privilege.
Because do you know what? There aren't that many out there. It was actually really tough. When I wrote this one, there were lots of examples of the rest of the kind of employee life cycle using a kind of people first approach, whereas internal comms, there's so few kind of in-house teams out there that are using the sorts of approaches that we're talking about here. So it was a real coup to get this one in the book, because it was quite hard work, wasn't it, Lee, to find examples. So you're pioneering, and the University of Leeds are pioneering. So hats off to them, and fair play, as they should be as an educational establishment. They should be leading the way in this stuff. So yeah, fair play to them for having the vision and being brave, one of your principles, to do this. So thank you for sharing. Anything I've forgotten, Katie? I always forget all the kind of the topping and tailing. She's shaking her head at me. I can't believe that. I mean, I remembered everything. So Yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
There
Go
is
on.
one very little thing. Our next webinar coming up.
Oh yeah, that's a biggie, isn't it, Lee? It's the actual book launch webinar.
It is, yeah. Details will be out very soon, but for your diary, it's the 3rd of November, I think 4 o'clock,
November.
Katie, is that
And
right?
December.
Um, December, sorry, gosh, yeah, all
3rd of
the
December.
dates are merging.
And what
So
we'll do is we'll be sending out more information about how you can sign up for that this week as well. So yeah, if you're an EXBase member, it will just be on the events page. But if you've signed up today through Eventbrite, then we'll make sure that we send this out to you as well. So you'll be able to join us on the next webinar.
and it's a webinar with a difference. We're doing it as like
It is.
an album drop. So
Yeah.
expect something a little
Good
bit
one.
different. We've been
Yeah.
inspired by our new podcast, which is called The Stuck Record.
I didn't plug that, did I? That's what you haven't plugged. The Stuck Record. Check that out. It's getting
Now available, yeah, on
getting some good
Spotify
feedback
and Apple
actually.
Podcasts.
We're like, does
Yeah.
the world need another podcast? We weren't sure. We were like, let's do it anyway. Let's have some fun. So check it out. And actually, we've had some really nice feedback, which is good. So I think it's worth doing. Anyway, enough from me and Lee for today. Thank you, Alex, again.
No,
Please
thank
join the
you.
next webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll follow up with various resources, etc. we've mentioned, and hopefully see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.